Today I have a guest that needs no introduction. Dr. Lester Thomas is head of new technology and innovation at Vodafone Digital and IT, and he's also a TM Forum Distinguished Fellow. Hi, Lester. Welcome to Telco in 20.
Hi, DR. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited to talk to you. We got DTW Ignite coming up here pretty soon in Copenhagen. And so I think we're going to have a lot of interesting things to talk about. And so to kick it off, for this year's event, what's your big message for the industry next week?
Yeah, we do have a big message for the industry. It's one that spans how telcos operate, how they compete, how they grow. I need to set it up by telling you why first before the what. So telco IT has become too complex, too rigid, too slow. I've heard you say this many times.
Yes.
Like much of what we've got was built for different ages, built before 5G, before like this AI first world. And that legacy, it is holding us back, I think. And if we want to compete on experience, agility and cost, we have to rethink how we build IT. And our goal is to make our core IT modular, open, and agile. And we need to break our monoliths into interoperable, plug and play building blocks, components that can evolve, and it can evolve with AI without having to start over every time.
Yeah.
And in the TM Forum, we call this the Composable IT and Ecosystems Mission. And our message is a simple one. It's like this composable IT. It isn't optional. It's how we unlock faster innovation, how we unlock smarter operations, and how we unlock scale in an AI-first world. And this isn't theory. Like, we're doing real things. We're building machine-readable standards. We're doing embedding AI at every layer based on a strong data foundation. And we're doing it all in the open, with open source approaches.
Yeah, well, let's talk about your strong data foundation. For years, I've been following this big data project that Vodafone put together. You announced it at Google Cloud Next in London in November 2019. And so how the project works was you guys took out 600 Hadoop servers across 11 countries and moved 17 petabytes of data into a big data ocean. And I've always wanted to ask you guys this question. What was going on that drove that change that, determined that you guys wanted to do that project?
Yeah. Before our partnership with Google, we invested very heavily in our own big data platforms.
Yeah.
And what we found was we were sinking all of our time and money in addressing the underlying tooling. The use cases was where we want to drive the real value to our business. And the tooling wasn't scalable enough. And too many of our markets, they were still using legacy analytics and business intelligence platforms. So our moving to Google, it was a massive simplification. As you said, it was like 600 Hadoop servers we decommissioned. And we rebuilt everything with cloud native approaches. And it was a co-investment with Google. Like, we did things like we built it was called data movement as a service. So how do you stream data into Google Cloud in near real time? We also did a lot of standards across the whole company. So we did new standards for data quality, lifecycle management, like the actual data models and privacy. And this has been a partnership, and I think it's been a really powerful partnership. I'm not sure if you saw last year, we re-signed a 10-year extension to our partnership. So clearly,
I did see that.
That's a sign it's going well.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say is, this strong data and analytics platform is absolutely foundational for all the work we're doing now with AI.
Yeah, no, I talked to someone from Vodafone about it a couple years ago, and they described it as an incredibly difficult project that you wish you had done 10 years ago. It was like the best move that you guys had ever made. And so, I talk about this a lot with, in my speeches, on my podcast, that building a strong foundation is critical. It's like the base layer for cloud and then now AI. And so this project, I use it as one of my examples in all of my talks. I know it very, very well. And you've now expanded it with Microsoft, right? In a project that you guys are calling AI Booster. So tell me about that project and what you're trying to achieve with that.
Yeah, so our partnership with Google gave us a massively scalable data platform. Now, AI Booster was the next evolution. And we launched it before this Gen AI craze that's happened in the last couple of years. We launched it in 2022. And originally it had traditional machine learning. So traditional AI, there's such a thing.
Old school AI, if you can say that.
Yeah. And we were already doing a huge amount of AI before Gen AI appeared. So we're already doing lots of network AI, like things like anomaly detection. We're doing lots of customer AI, like customer value management. And then when Gen AI appeared on the horizon, we extended it to support Gen AI models, and that's when we introduced
Perfect.
Microsoft. So we effectively built this AI booster across Google and Microsoft, and now we have access to all the machine learning, but also all these Gen AI models. And we have models from OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, all the open source models, and it runs like seamlessly. It's a single platform for us, and what it does to us is it supports everything that we need to do for AI, but it embeds like our security, our privacy, our responsible AI guardrails. So it's how we democratize access to AI services,
Right.
but while at the
Right.
same time we control AI sprawl. And it's like, we have to make sure that we're using AI in an ethical way. And if you're going to embed AI in absolutely every part of your business, in every function, every piece of software, you have to do it as part of the actual software stack. It's not an afterthought. You don't apply AI to it. It's got to be part of your fabric of your software.
Yeah. And why the move with Microsoft? Was that more to be multi-cloud and kind of, have a backup again and not put all your eggs in the Google basket? Or was there some services or something that Microsoft was coming to the table for Vodafone that you guys needed?
Again, it's down to the data. So in Vodafone, like we put all our commercial, all our network, all our performance data in the Google Cloud, in our core data ocean, but also we're very big users of Microsoft. So all of our documentation, all of our unstructured data, all the knowledge workers, and that's all running in the, Office 365 cloud. So when the Gen AI came, we knew that we wanted to be able to apply Gen AI across both like this gravity of data in Vodafone. And it's also given us access to all the open AI models on
Yeah.
Azure, as well as
Yeah.
all the other models
Perfect.
on GCP.
Yeah, totally. So, I would imagine all of this hard work that you guys have been doing, thinking about AI at every layer, this very strong data foundation. How is it laying the foundation for Vodafone to adopt the public cloud more broadly?
It's a good question. We actually had started adopting public cloud even before that. So it was about a decade ago. We went very aggressively into public cloud. At that time, we knew that we had a lot to learn, and we wanted to adopt the practices of internet hyperscale cloud companies. And we decided we had to do it in an agile way. So we decided the first public cloud we did was in our customer engagement platform. So we re-engineered, we did a huge amount of insourcing, and all the customer engagement platforms are now re-engineered using like cloud native Microsoft software. And so things like the My Vodafone app or the Toby chatbot, they natively
Yes.
use public cloud
Yeah.
services.
Yeah, yeah. So, cloud native means a lot of things to different people. I mean, it could be the way I talk about it, which is an application, built specifically for the public cloud with public cloud services. But I've coined this phrase fake cloud, where people dump it into Kubernetes container because Kubernetes is cloud native. All of a sudden, I'm cloud native now, or they lift and shift it to the public cloud. And so, what does cloud native mean for Vodafone when you guys talk about that?
Yeah, like you absolutely have to re-engineer your software. You can't lift and shift workloads into the cloud. And when we started this work, we created our own definition. So there's a Vodafone definition, which was applications specifically engineered to leverage cloud services to deliver 24 by 7, real time, on demand, multi-tenant, elastic and scalable services. So it was about adopting the native cloud services, but it's also about delivering real benefits to your customers and to our operations. And when we did the work, as part of our adoption, if you just migrated workloads to the cloud on virtual machines with the same manual operations, we wouldn't actually consider that in our metrics. So when we're reporting internally on our cloud adoption, it wouldn't count even if you had moved something to the public cloud, if it wasn't truly a cloud native thing.
Yeah. It's so amazing to hear you talk about how you guys are thinking about it, because it's exactly the way I describe it and what I want everyone in telco to do. And so, going a little bit further, last year you were quoted as saying you're moving every new application to the public cloud. So let's talk about that and double click on that a little bit. If you look across your entire IT estate, what percentage of the applications are running, according to this Vodafone cloud native standard?
Yeah, so we've been doing it since 2015. So from 2015, we re-engineered all of our customer engagement systems to be truly cloud native. And that was like our learning exercise. Since 2020, 2020, we've moved every new application to the public cloud. And again, this isn't re-hosting, this is re-engineering for the cloud. So if I look today, if you look at our digital workloads, like our engagement system, it's probably 80 or 90% in the public cloud.
Wow.
Our legacy core IT, this is the real challenge, that's much, much lower. It's probably more like 40%. But as I said, every new thing we're doing, like over 90% of our net new investment is going into cloud native workloads. And this is the real challenge that what we're talking about in DTW. It's how do you reimagine your legacy core IT as modular cloud native software? How can you learn the lessons from digital and apply it into core IT? And we're doing this in a very collaborative way. So we built a really strong collaboration with software vendors, with hyperscale cloud players, and even with our competitors. And we're standardizing how you build cloud native components and how you build and deploy them. And our goal is for the whole industry to move faster and avoid this trap of migrating legacy practices and legacy processes as we move to the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the biggest problems, I think, in the telecom industry, right? Coming in as an outsider, right? I'm relatively new to telco, showed up in around 2017 and looked around and I was like, whoa, we haven't been deploying applications like this since the late 90s. But the legacy, the burden of legacy is so heavy. Like there's just so much gravity with all the integrations and all the applications that it's super, this is not easy. These are decades-long projects that take a lot of vision from the IT leaders of the telcos to have faith that it will work. And you just hear about all the failed transformations. So there's a lot of fear. And so, Vodafone has a huge BSS estate. Back in 2020, you were on a podcast talking about how every one of your opcos has about 180 BSS OSS applications. And so altogether, that's thousands of applications that you and your team are managing. And obviously, as a distinguished fellow, you're widely adopting the ODA from TM Forum and the open APIs across these opcos. And so what has been the biggest challenge in implementing the ODA and the open APIs across so many sites and countries and obviously different vendors?
Yeah, like the legacy IT is the biggest challenge. Like the open APIs work brilliantly in exposing your core IT towards your digital channels. So we use them in every market and they've been really successful. It's been, again, one of the foundational things we've done, but the legacy IT, that's the biggest challenge. And the legacy IT, it runs our most critical processes and it's the most important part of our business. And as you said, like previous approaches of like greenfield transformations, they're too costly and too risky. Several years ago, we said, we're not going to do that. And we had to take a different approach.
Yeah.
And when we started this different approach, we knew we also needed to get all of our partners on board, to get the whole industry behind how we do this.
Correct.
And we think like some of the fundamentals about how we do it. And when we started, we actually defined 3 new principles by which we would sort of live and breathe to do this in a different way. And the first one was when we create standards for cloud native software, those standards have to be software defined. We can't have standards designed to be read by humans. We have standards that fit into our automation, into our CI/CD processes. And now, like, you have to have standards designed to be read by AI models and copilots. The next one was this adoption of this open source culture and practice. I'm like a real big fan of that approach to collaboration. So when we're doing this open digital architecture, it's not a traditional standards collaboration. It's all based on using all the tools and like it's all built in GitHub. All the teams collaborate using all those tools. There's a huge amount of CI/CD automation into how the standards themselves are built. There's a completely different way of building standards. And the last one is we actually need to change as an industry how we procure software. So we need to move away from like this RFP process.
Yeah.
And we talk about move from RFP to POC. So like,
yeah.
If I want to do something new, I shouldn't write documents and send it to suppliers to fill. We need to have a more of a partnership and we need to have strong standards so I can very rapidly assemble proof of concepts. But the R selection should be based on real data from real working software. That's the only real test. We actually launched this standard on the 1st of January this year. So this new standard for components is quite new. So all hyperscalers in the world have joined in. Virtually all the software vendors, like all the strategic vendors or partners of Vodafone have joined. Virtually all the CSPs have joined. And we believe that this will give us like a times 10 improvement in agility and efficiency. So it's not we do this and we can shave 30% off our
For
operation.
sure, for sure.
It's
It needs to be big. It needs to be
a
big.
step
Yeah.
change. And it only launched in January. It's already live in our first market, which again, it's a proof point. So we launched it first in our market in Greece, and it's demonstrating like this times 10. They're getting real results, and
That's
they are
awesome.
matching to say, yes, it does give you this step change in performance, in agility and efficiency. And what I'd say is, like, this is just the beginning. And in fact, I think the most important thing that we're doing is this collaboration, because this foundation of how do you build agility and how you interact with partners is the most important thing. So now we have this innovation hub as part of the TM Forum. I meet with the team every day. We have a daily stand-up, and it's how we're pivoting to drive all the AI into all of our components. And whatever, like, we don't know what's going to come tomorrow. Whatever tomorrow throws at us, the most important thing is agility for us to collaborate at scale and at speed. That's the most important thing.
And is it antithetical for the vendors to collaborate in this way, given it's open and open source, right? Like, where, speaking as a vendor, right? You're like, hey, that's my IP, and now I'm like opening it up and sharing it. Does it mean that Vodafone's now building most of this stuff and not relying on vendors as much? But you mentioned that you're collaborating with your vendors, so.
Yeah. So when we started, we were very open up front. So everyone who's joined this, they signed a manifesto. And in the manifesto, it's set out basically the foundations, the infrastructure software is all open source. And it is anyway. Like, if I went into any one of my vendors and I said, show me like your fantastic functional software, show me the platform it runs on. It all runs on Linux.
Yeah.
Generally it runs on Kubernetes. Generally, like, there's a whole suite of open source. So you said, let's just accept that that's the case, and the infrastructure software let's build as a common reference implementation, and it's all about the integration layers between the software, and that's what we're open sourcing.
Got it.
The actual functional software and all the people involved in this is still like a black box. It's still commercial proprietary, but how is it exposed? And we're removing friction by how you deploy, manage, and operate, which is much more at the infrastructure layer rather than at the functional layer.
Yeah. Well, you've been talking about AI and how you're starting to adopt it and add it to every layer. And so you have your cloud native approach, your TM Forum mandate and openness. There's no one better positioned to start implementing and adopting AI than, I think, Vodafone, your data project, your cloud native approach, and of course the TM Forum ODA. And AI has just, you mentioned it earlier, burst onto the scene. It changes literally every day. Every day something new has been announced. And so how is that changing the thought process at Vodafone and how you guys are implementing technology?
Yeah, like this AI it's moving fast, and it's way faster than any of us even predicted.
It's crazy,
And,
yeah.
Yeah, and that makes you stop thinking incrementally. You have to rethink virtually everything that you do, and that's what we've been doing. So when we built this AI booster, it was to democratize AI across our business. So AI is not done in this one function in Vodafone. You go into every function in Vodafone and you'll see their own strategy for how they're adopting AI to make their part of their business more effective.
Right.
Like, you have to do that to enable you to work at sort of AI speed.
Yeah.
And it's forcing us to rethink everything from how we design software. So we're thinking about machine-readable, like, architecture, artifacts and standards. And it's like, how do you embed AI in every layer? So it's not just the actual functional software, it's how do you operate it, how do you design it, how do you build it. Like AI, it's not a feature, it's the fabric of the software itself.
Yep.
And you have to also be clear on your goal. So our goal is quite simple. It's to amplify human capabilities. So all the people across the business engaged in it, like, the goal is to make them more capable in doing their job, to make them faster, smarter, more creative, so they can do things that they wouldn't never have previously been able to do. And if you want to see this, we've got some great demos coming to our stand at the TM Forum conference. So, if you want to see this, come by to the Vodafone stand. We'll talk about cloud native AI, ODA, what it takes to build a future together.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people are going to be interested. I get that question a lot of how are you actually making it happen? And, I've been saying I think the LM layer is a commodity, right? You're going to use different models for different tasks. You might be optimizing on cost or speed or accuracy. You got to build your system in a way to adopt the different models. And I think the value really is in that application layer. And I think your enterprise data being super valuable and being able to access it, from different parts of your organization and then use an LLM to come up with a great answer is something we've never experienced. I think it's changing the design of organizations. I think, my big idea last week was we're no longer going to have org charts because org charts represented knowledge of humans, but instead you're going to have some sort of hierarchy of our agents, right? The AI capability with the knowledge embedded in that. And it's just such a different way to think. Yeah. And so Vodafone is obviously pushing boundaries, taking risks. And I've heard that when you're not revolutionizing telco technology, you're a big adventure seeker, flying planes, sailing, and you're picking up a new sport that's called wing foiling. And so what is wing foiling? I'm sure no one's heard of that. Tell me all about that.
Yeah, I do like adventurous sports. So I've had a pilot's license for many years. I once had an incident where I had an engine failure and I had to land in a field.
Wow.
Fortunately, my training kicked in and I landed with no damage to myself.
Steady hand and mind, I think that would take. Yeah.
We have this saying, a good landing is one you can walk away. Yeah. A great landing is if you can use a plane again. So, and I could use the plane, I didn't damage the plane.
Right, that's great.
I do quite a lot of sailing. I enjoy water sports. And I've just taken up this new sport, this thing called wing foiling, which you stand on a board and there's a hydrofoil wing under the board. So effectively you're flying in the water and you hold a giant inflatable sail. Basically, you have to pretend you know what you're doing while the wind it launches you into spectacular wipeouts. So it's a bit like flying, but it's much less control and much more splashing. And for me, that's what sort of draws me in. So whatever I'm doing, whether I'm flying a plane or on the water or working in tech, for me, it's all about learning new things. It's about trying new approaches and occasionally falling over in style. So,
well, I think that spirit that you bring to your work, and I wish more telco IT executives had that, sort of desire to experiment and take a couple of calculated risks and rethink. And so your sense of adventure certainly carries over into how you are reshaping IT and trying to get out from the burden of legacy and really imagine a new way of working. And so, Lester, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm sure a lot of people have learned not just what Vodafone is doing, but maybe a way forward. And so I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thank you.
Thanks very much.